I'm going to read from my collection, English Martyrs. The title comes from a church in southeast London, near the Old Kent Road, English Martyrs, and there are 6 or 7 statues, wooden statues in the church that struck me very much when I first saw them. And one of them is of Saint Oliver Plunkett, who was executed at Tyburn about 340 years ago. And he struck me in particular because his head is currently in a church in Drogheda, near the border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, and I was forced to go there several times as a child to look at his head, which resembles a kind of coconut, and is quite unnerving. So I was struck by the statue, and I also found out around the same time that on the 300th anniversary of Oliver Plunkett's execution, there was a mass on Clapham Common in London, where his bones and his head, which had been distributed across various places, Germany, Devon, Ireland, were all brought together in a helicopter, and they landed on Clapham Common in front of a huge crowd, and then there was a mass. And that's kind of the occasion for this poem. It's part of a sequence of poems that constitutes the second half of English Martyrs, the book, and it begins with the voice of an elderly Irish migrant to London, probably moved there in the 1970s, who's speaking to a younger person. But eventually Oliver Plunkett's voice takes over. So this is called The Head of Oliver Plunkett. Listen to me. Let me tell you a story. I drifted over here as a youngster, a lifetime before your kind did, the runt of a big litter, falling in with the crowd on night shift in the mentals. That was me for 40 years, man and boy, wiping people's arses for a living. Electric shock? Of course we did. Nobody suffers. It works, doesn't it? But I do mind sitting in the annex once long past midnight, the dead TV, the green on greener walls, slick and shiny, when up steams the old dumb waiter, and in it, a head. Here, you're an educated man, it said, although I am not. What says you to the way they gathered the hames of my bones from downside, Drogheda and Hildesheim, gathered and raised them up sursum corda, but not to the Lord, no, but carried inside a shuddersome, buzzing yoke, a hellish reliquary in the shape of a fly, whose head was a black orb, tool smooth like a conjurer's, an obsidian crystal ball all filled with lights and clockwork things, with a scorpion's jagged tail and long black wings like swords that whirled above it in a circle and hoisted it up the way a mighty body might pull a bucket up a scaffolding, so it sways with its load from side to side, but yet holds steady, up and up, hand over fist, into the motley sky. It was Oliver Plunkett, the last of the English martyrs, it says here, his head rotating, the gibbous skin all mustard and ash and about to explode like a TV dinner that's been bubbling in a microwave for all eternity. This was the head before it had cooled to the bulked up coconut you see in Drogheda, as it must have been when snatched by its glib from the fire in Tyburn and bunged in a sack like a rooster, the way it looked when moved out from the city in a gallon can, strapped to the chassis of an Arctic, banging off the sides, its crowing lost in the grind of the engine, out through the gates of the city and on into Surrey, where the air brakes finally hiss and lapse into the peace of a cobbled courtyard, where fountain and pear tree water and scent the air, lute and viol, and the head still screeching, carried into cool purple murmuring shadow, its raging skin balmed and anointed. That hissing tangoed torn and shrunken dermis, was speaking to me now from its mossy box in a curious, highfalutin accent, a mixture of the north and south, east and west of Ireland. 1 minute all spiky consonants, and the next a wheedling, querulous sing-song. 1 minute a rapid forensic mutter, and the next the toothless sough of syllables in rushes, and all the while its eyes straying about, bright green and unblinking, lidless eyes, earless ears, a mouthless mouth that had never ceased to utter. At last the helicopter stopped, making no headway, but turning very slowly, whether diesel or widdershins I cannot remember, for it seemed to me that the land itself was rotating and the fly was the still point, and at that precise moment my bones all called out to each other a strange sound, an insect chirrup and chitter that cut through the pummel and clatter of the rotors, calling out, begging to be assembled, to be joined at the root of the brainstem and the tip of the spinal cord, to be tied together again at talus and tibia, for my clavicle and scapula to touch and attach, and all of my numbered bones to be wrapped tightly in a winding sheet and, like a burial at sea, ease over the gunwale of that infernal engine, so that I might rise or fall myself, or better remain, a mute white fixture in the evening sky, bobbin or spool that cannot unbind, a chrysalis pinned to the velvet board of night. Thank you.